Good morning, Encore Learning members and friends. My name is Tom Manteuffel, and the class that I'll be teaching this fall at Encore Learning is the Renaissance in Northern Europe. This is a class I've not taught before. I did, however, 2 years ago, teach a course on the Renaissance, a 4-week course on the Renaissance in Florence. And this is in some ways a follow-on to it, although I can assure you it does not require the earlier class, or for that matter, any real background in art at all, I think, to fully appreciate. So the Renaissance in Northern Europe will begin with a fairly heavy focus on two of the artists that are really the tent poles of the period we're talking about. One at the very beginning of the period, Jan van Eyck in Bruges. And we will talk in particular about a very important painting of his called the Ghent Altarpiece, one which has risen very close to the top of my own personal list of the 25 greatest pieces of art in Western art. The other important artist is more toward the end of the period we're talking about, and that is Albrecht Dürer in Nuremberg. Both artists I care about passionately, and we will talk in general about other artists as well, but the focus at the beginning of the period and at the end of the period is between those two towers of art. We'll talk about the geopolitical economic circumstances and what it was different in Florence than it was in Northern Europe, and why things didn't happen, for example, in Paris and London. We'll talk about the materials of painting, oil particularly versus the temper that was used elsewhere, and why that made a huge difference in how paintings appeared. Opaque colors were used in the South, more transparent colors, glazes, were used in the North, and that produced actually quite different effects. We'll talk about color treatment, the two competing methods of altering color, which artists used in this interval. We'll talk about how artists used color to draw the eye. We'll contrast art in the North and the South in terms of iconographies, how they treated separately and differently Annunciations, Davids, Nativities, adorations, etc. And then we'll talk about the interaction between the Northern and the Southern artists, which occurred largely in the last decades of the 15th century. Interesting comparisons between the two and how pieces, approaches in one area wound up in the art of the other. Finally, I will, as always, highlight art within reach of us here in DC. I like to do that. And then at the end, there will be a period for one of my favorite parts of the talk, which is the questions that I get from all of you at Encore Learning. So we will be contemplating the great art and ponder its meanings and its context, and also talking about the story behind the paintings. I like to emphasize that part of it. 4 Wednesdays in October, starting at noon, or noon to 1:30. I very much look forward to the class, and I hope you join us for that.